Invincible Mumu. By Han Jung-Wheelia. Chapter 153. Imperial Palace. Part 4. Talk. Mumu sent a gesture, telling him to come down, with his hand dripping with blood, and the emperor on the throne, upon seeing this, could feel a chill running down his spine. At the time of the founding ceremony of the hidden troops, the emperor had watched the guardians of the two great warriors, and the captain of hidden troops fight. And the fight looked so strong and intense that it was impossible to clearly see what had happened, along with it devastating the place. Accordingly, the emperor considered that the investment into this group had been good. No way. The emperor, who acknowledged him, and his two guardians were shocked at this absurd death. He assumed that it would be 100% success. But in the middle of the room, with the opponent not being even seen. What is this? Emperor Hongins asked the two people on his side. At this, the West Spear Troops commander, who was on the left, spoke without taking his eyes off Mumu. Your Majesty. I think you need to leave this place. What do you mean? The man doesn't appear to be close to a great warrior, but seems to be at a level similar to or even higher than the four great warriors. The West Spear Troops captain directly fought with the captain of the hidden troops. The martial arts of this dead captain was as good as being next in line to be a great warrior. And to subdue such a person this easily. Drip. Cold sweat ran down his forehead. The tension was extremely high. He himself didn't have confidence to deal with this monster. Your Majesty. Please allow me to use the relic for this. Do we have to use the relic now? There is no way we can defeat him without that. I agree with Eunuch Cho on this. The captain of the East Spear Troops agreed. As the guardians of the Imperial Palace could easily be subdued and taken down, the relic had to be used. I too had competed with that man 16 years ago when they were raised in the palace. Among the 6 weapons with an ego, there was one pair, the Yang sword and Yin blade. They boldly held out against that warrior in the past with the support of the North Heavenly First, and the Southern Blade of Emperor had to stop him. Your Majesty, allow us. The Emperor nodded his head with trembling eyes and looked nervous. And the two guardians went down the podium. Eunuch Go gave orders to the several waiting for it. Take His Majesty and get out. That one there is. Kwang. It was right then. With a huge roar, the floor around was crushed, and along with that, Mumu moved ahead at a tremendous speed. Eunuch Cho. I get it. SRNG. The two of them pulled out their uniquely shaped swords with the middle of the blade having empty design in it and swung them ahead. Chong. It was the moment when they swung the weapons and a low sound overlapped. A strong wave arose in the middle of the two, forming a circle, rushing at Mumu. Mumu tried to break the wave rushing at him, but... Pang! The moment he swung his fist, his body floated up into the air. It was a strange thing. The moment the waves were touched, all the weight around the body vanished and the sensation of being supported by the ground along with it. Take His Majesty out. Ah. Woong. Eunuch Cho swung his sword at Mumu, who was floating high up in the air. The sharp blue sword energy was shot straight at Mumu's chest. Mumu, who had been turned upside down, slashed it down. Kong. Kwang. The flying sword energy bounced off and was redirected into the ground. At this, Eunuch Cho was shocked. It wasn't the sword energy being cut down which shocked him, but it being done with bare hands. He is a person who deviates from the normal teachings. Eunuch Go. I know. Papa Pack. The two of them crossed their weapons in the character Z and moved for Mumu at high speed. Chuck. Sword and blade energy flooded towards Mumu. But as if Mumu had gotten used to this infinitely lighter body, he flicked his fingers readily at the strong winds. Papapapang. The invisible winds moved, and they were quite powerful as well. The air, which was fiercely blowing now, was glowing blue like a flower ready to bloom in the wind. Quackwang. However, even if they used this as a defense, the power of the wind didn't die easily, so the pillars were broken and the ceiling shook. At this sight, a gong bit his tongue. All three of them were so different. The guardians of the palace are known to be potentially comparable to the four great warriors. It seems the rumors are true. They were already strong to begin with and now even had relics on them with unknown powers, so this can be considered as a time when the strongest could be defeated. Huh. As Mumu took a deep breath, his chest began to swell up. In that state, Mumu blew it out. And Mumu's body, which was now weightless in a zone, stretched out towards the two eunuchs who were about to cross blades. No. The two of the eunuchs clicked their tongues at Mumu's attempt and began to cross the blades. The power of the two weapons didn't end there. Chong! When the sword and blade touched each other, another wave spread around from the middle parts. Seeing this, Mumu lowered his head and blew. Huo! Pang! Mumu's body soared up, and thanks to that, the wave of attacks didn't hit him, but the other warriors who were surrounding the true king. Quang! Quack! T the body! Those who were hit by the wave fell to the ground, and they fell face down as if the weight of their bodies had been doubled. Their bodies were now digging into the floor. Ah! Seeing this, Mumu's eyes lit up, and at that moment the two eunuchs moved to where Mumu was and swung their weapons. Chong! You cannot avoid this. Along with the shout, the wave rushed for Mumu. They were just 10 feet away, so the wave hit Mumu, and the moment it touched him. Bang! Mumu's body, which was floating midair, fell down. Depending on the way the swords were crossed, the waves would decide on making their target float weightlessly or increasing their target's weight, causing them to fall to the ground. This they called repulsion and attraction. And it was because of the power they had that they managed to defend the palace 17 years ago. Ta! The two eunuchs who came down looked at Mumu with a smile. The stronger the internal energy being used, the more they would feel an effect. And so they laughed at Mumu. The force pulling to the ground is 100 times greater. Unlike repulsion, which causes weight to disappear, the body cannot move now. Normally, they couldn't handle up to 100 times the power. However, after nearly 17 years of training, they were able to increase the weight increase inflicted. Even that monster in the past had his movements dulled at this. But if it was several times more than that, then any person should have been killed. Eunuch Cho. Let's end this. The two eunuchs each aimed for Mumu's neck and heart. It was about to be done before Mumu could get adjusted. But... crack! The swords, which were surrounded by sword energy, were caught in Mumu's hands. The eyes of the two eunuchs widened. What does it mean to be able to move against such heaviness? They were shocked at this, to which Mumu said. They seem to be good enough to be used as training tools. What? It is a waste to break them, so I will end it right now. Quack quack wang. At that moment, Mumu's leg, which was stuck to the ground, surged up and hit the eunuch in the left rib. Quack. Crack. Quack. Pong. Quack quack wang. With the sound of the bones breaking for Eunuch Go, his body bounced several times on the ground, and he passed through the room and disappeared outside. People could hear the roar, but no one knew where he ended up. Seeing this scene, Eunuch Cho was dumbfounded. It should have been difficult to even move with such force pushing Mumu down. But now his leg was raised, and he kicked someone out of the room too. Why you? How can you move under this weight? You call this weight? Not heavy? While he was shocked, Mumu realized the weapon he caught in one hand and struck the other one with the palm of his hand. Quack. Quack. Crack. The neck had burrowed into his torso like a turtle. Tat-attack. Quack. The emperor was escorted with the eunuchs and moved outside the hall. Face didn't mean anything at this point anymore, and it wasn't the situation to question things. The more stubborn he was, the more of a crisis would be. And... Quang. Hearing the roar from within the throne room, the emperor looked behind him. Quack quack wang. Something broke through the walls of the room and flew through the other places. It kept flying so much that it destroyed many buildings in its path. What was that? It was so fast that he couldn't see it clearly, but it looked like one of the two commanders. Were they taken down in such a short time? Your Majesty. Why, yes. At the urging of his men, the emperor turned his head and ran. He had to somehow get out and get all the troops to stop this, and it was when they were running ahead. Kwang. At that moment, someone landed in front of him. It was Mumu. The human face mask on him made him look like a reaper now. Eik. Emperor Hongans was scared as he stepped back, and at this the eunuchs around moved ahead to protect him. Your Majesty. Run. Pack. Seemingly like Mumu thought they were a minor nuisance, he knocked them all down with the gesture of a hand, and all the eunuchs flew out as if they were paper dolls. Papa Pang. Yuk. Quack. Seeing this absurd sight, the emperor fell back on the ground, and he ran with what power he could muster. This was not something he could even think to deal with. Step. Mumu walked ahead, grabbed him by the collar, and lifted him up. Then made eye contact as he asked. I will ask just once. Where's the plaque? Chapter 154. Imperial Palace. Part 5. Among the 6 departments, there was a military department. In one of its offices was a young man wearing the official uniform of a 5th-ranked officer. He was the one in charge of the inner palace's guards, and he was resting his chin on his desk by wiggling his fingers. In the Imperial Palace, he is known as Il Mu Hyung, a guard captain, but his real identity was Hyun Mule, the owner of the jade plaque and one of the 5 who received it. Originally, it was during work hours, but he was thinking that there was something strange happening in the current situation. The true king came to the palace, so why is there no report yet? Of course, there was a report. However, the report came from one of the low-ranking officers, and not his men. Strange. The fact that the true king entered the palace was no different from the story of the Imperial Palace's hidden troops failing the mission. Up to that point, the true king might have been in a hidden ambush with trump cards on all sides, but right now he and his daughter were within the palace together. This means that not just the hidden troops but many more here had failed their missions to kill them. Obviously it had to be as such. However, Oh Muyang didn't report anything. Oh Muyang was being cautious with everything, and he was the one who was good at ploys and would respond to any irregularities swiftly. But there was something suspicious about him not reporting anything. At this point, the situation felt hard for the emperor or hidden troops to move. Then what is Oh Muyang doing not coming to him? This cannot be. In the end, Hyun Mule decided to visit the man himself and was ready to head out of the inner palace, but a crippled old eunuch came to the entrance. Seeing that, Hyun Mule snorted as he said, I guess the item did you good. You couldn't even walk right until a moment back. Don't be suspicious of snooping here and there and focus on getting back to health. With those words to the eunuch, he tried to pass by until the old one said, Are you heading for Oh Muyang? Surprisingly, the voice of the old eunuch was quite young, not matching his appearance at all. Even his eyes were overflowing with energy. Hyun Mule, who tried to pass by the old eunuch, stopped. What are you trying to say? If you were trying to go for the person I think you are, then I recommend not to. What? Hyun Mule turned his head and frowned. And he looked at the old eunuch and said, Are you being cocky for a person who cannot even use his body right? I am not being cocky. Then to whom do you think you are to tell me to not go? At his angry tone, the old eunuch bowed his head and said, How can I forget the grace that you have shown? I am just telling you this to repay the favor. Repay? Yes. At those words of his, the glare of Hyun Mule sharpened. What do you know? The warrior of super strength has entered the Imperial Palace. What? At those words, Hyun Mule's eyes widened. What now? Who came? You mean the one called Mumu? Yes. What nonsense is this? He should be in the academy. He showed up as a guard. At those words Hyun Mule looked shocked. But this old eunuch was supposed to be with Oh Muyang and was the one who takes care of the tasks Oh Muyang gives. So this isn't someone to easily ignore. Hyunmil thought that he had to go to the office of Omuyang, but he was stopped. Do not go. Who are you to tell me? Calm down. Muo is in his hands and he was betrayed by the descendant of the Wicked Spear clan. What? Hyunmil was at a loss for words at this. Did the Wicked Spear clan which he asked to capture Eugene Sung betray him? Do not talk nonsense, he is a man who'd rather die than succumb to the pressure of. He referred to the academy student as Lord. Lord? What is that? And Kong Mui was with him. Kong Mui? Hyunmil was now even more confused at this. It felt difficult to even understand what kind of situation this was with all this new information coming in. Why would a man under him betray him and refer to a child as his lord? And Kong Mui was here? Did it mean they were working together? Clench. Hyunmil clenched his teeth. It was difficult to figure out exactly what was happening here with the information he held. What was certain was that what he built up until now had begun to shake one after another. Fucking dogs. Hyunmil thought that he had to catch them right then and there, but the old eunuch said, calm down. There may be some hidden plan. He boldly invaded the palace and is aiming for you. Secrets and whatever else do not matter. There is that student there, and if he can be dealt with, then most of the variable factors will vanish. An accurate decision to kill. However, the eunuch tried to dissuade him. 2 of the 4 great warriors have suffered in the hands of that child. That means he also is around their level or stronger than them. So you are saying I will lose to someone like that? Woon. As soon as he said it, the clothes of Hyunmil fluttered with a strong wind coming up. The bookshelves around began to shake. The force was so strong that the old eunuch's breathing turned rough. Hook, hook. Even before his dantian was destroyed, enduring it would be difficult. Hyunmil looked at him and said, do not act up. You are a thing to be used. Kook. Bumping to him might not be. Clench. Quack. Hyunmil grabbed the eunuch by the throat. You seem to be wishing for death first. They lost life due to carelessness. Please, calm down. Ugh. The old eunuch's eyes were rolling back as breathing turned difficult. Hyunmil, who was glaring at him, relaxed his clenched hand. Pack. Cough cough. The old eunuch collapsed on the ground coughing. Hyunmil, who was glaring at the man disapprovingly, calmed his anger. He almost did something bad, unable to hold back his anger, but there was a point in the old eunuch's words. Carelessness. There is a high chance that this notorious guy had something up his sleeve, and he was said to be unmatched in strength, being so bold that he came to the palace, so he must be more prepared. And to be swayed by him would be like playing into his plan. So he asked, what do you mean then? The old eunuch's mouth, which had been bent down from coughing, twitched and glared at him. The eunuch said while hiding his appearance. Ha, ha, leave the palace right now. Papa Pack. At a forest hill to the southwest about 10 kilometers from the capital. Hyunmil and the descendants of the 8 evil families led by himself were using footwork. Damn it. How did things get this twisted? Although they managed to move from the palace, their pride was hurt by this. They had been running until now. However, everything was messed up because of that one guy. Hyunmil turned his head and looked at the old eunuch, not liking his sight. I am not asking you to give up on the Imperial Palace. Doesn't this sound like it though? For a very short time, you just need to disappear. After all, isn't this like saying to avoid that kid and hide? In order to evade being pursued as much as possible and not leave any trace, he escaped with as few people as possible, but he couldn't meet their eyes either. Until now, we have endured all kinds of humiliation through the process of trying to rebuild the name and family. Everything is for the greater world. You shouldn't consider this as humiliation. Clench. Greater world. If it wasn't for that, they would have fought with Mumu no matter what the outcome was. If they lost to him, then it will be over. Hyunmil eventually chose a safe path. Enjoy the moment. both you and the 4 great warriors will die in my hands." Hyunmil narrowed his eyes as he vowed to himself. It was because they could see someone come. However, the form was different from normal people. It was walking with its head lowered like a doll losing its string. This was a bizarre sight. Phew. Well, they were quite annoyed with it, so. SRNG. He pulled out the sword from his waist. He had to vent his anger out on something. But just then. Pack. The form which was walking while staggering straightened its body and immediately raised its head and looked ahead. Ah. The old eunuch knelt down. Holding his head, he looked ahead in wonder and frustration as he tore the skin off. The skin began to show off the face hidden under it. It was Sa Muhyo, a member of the academy brought in as a criminal and brought by Omuyong. PRR. And in his eyes, there was a weird light. Hyunmil was said to have the most amazing talent among the 5 who held the plaque. Even though he hadn't shown a serious side, he was someone who had a strong body, but with his body suffering too much in the past, he collapsed. Quack. He clutched his chest as if his heart hurt. And from a place about 10 steps away, a monster with its right upper body blown away staggered to him. It was a terrifying image to see him move without dying despite part of his upper body gone, and the monster which appeared gently stroked the head of suffering Hyunmil and said, "I am reaping the harvest, my alter ego." At the same time in the throne room. In the throne room, there were many struggling to protect the true king, who had been surrounded by the uniformed guards. With the best warriors of the palace being brought in, Mumu had been able to handle them all. Ah. Kwang. The blade energy used by the twin blade wielder Ah Gong cut through the place. At his chaotic attack, 3 men had fallen back with huge wounds on them. Normally one would be afraid of this sight. Do not give them a chance. If the true king is caught, victory is ours. They were anxious to catch their target. Since they were now in the palace and the hidden troops captain was defeated, they had to capture the true king to win now. Only then can that monster be stopped. Need to catch the true king. Before His Majesty is defeated, we must strike first. They didn't have the talent to withstand a monster like Mumu. Therefore, in order to protect the emperor, it was considered that the only answer was to take the true king as a hostage. If not, get the princess. The weakness of the true king was his daughter. But Hong Meian wasn't just any girl, but a 3rd-year student at the academy. And she wasn't standing out because of Mumu and Ah Gong, but she was quite skilled too. Ha, ha. But the problem was the number of opponents. Despite having skilled people on the side of the true king, the number on the side of the emperor was too much. And unlike them, these people were more trained to protect a person. Still? She thought that it wouldn't take too long to catch the emperor if it was Mumu, but this was taking longer than he thought. Was something happening outside? As she was puzzled. Bang! At that moment the ceiling of the room had shattered and landed on the floor. Everyone stopped fighting and looked there. One of the uniformed guards looked there and shouted in pain. "Why, Your Majesty?" At the place where they landed, there was Mumu with his human skin mask and the emperor who was shocked, being clenched by the robe he was wearing. Despair flooded onto the faces of the people of the palace, at the sight of their emperor being taken captive. Tack. Yuk. Then when Mumu let go of the hand, the emperor fell, stumbling down. This. How dare you? At that appearance, the eunuchs and more couldn't hold back their anger. However, they were still shocked with the emperor's robes being stained yellow and the tears flowing from his face. How terrified was the man? Tremble. One uniformed guard couldn't stand it and yelled. How dare you do this to us? Stop. The emperor screamed at him. Your Majesty? How dare you scream with my safety on the line? On the contrary, the members of the palace, even the skilled warriors who all wanted to shout out at the man were now left dumbfounded. As if he didn't care about the reaction, the emperor noticed Mumu. I think they are still like that because they don't know how great your power is. Please don't be angry. Huh. They were speechless at how humiliating the actions of the emperor were. The great emperor of the empire was giving in to a man in fear. Seeing the emperor act like this, Hong Neian, the princess, smiled. Then will the problem be solved if the emperor is dealt with? Ah. She thought they were words to comfort her, but it actually happened. Chapter 155. Imperial Palace. Part 6. At the humiliating actions of the emperor, Gong bit his lip. To see the emperor succumb to him like this. The emperor is the nation itself. And he even had the title of the Son of Heaven. Since the emperor was a being above all the people and ruled the vast land, even the warriors and martial sects never rejected or acted difficult with him. It was also because he was someone with numerous people around him to carry out tasks which no sect would have. However, the emperor right now had turned back into just a single individual. It was an event which had more of an effect and impact than the four great warriors. No, this might go down in history. He never thought that this would be a sight one could see. Like Gong, the true king also felt ashamed upon seeing this. In order to save his own skin, the emperor called himself the ruler of a great empire but now surrendered like this. The emperor's choice is right. He thought he knew why the emperor threw his pride away. However, the emperor who chose his own safety was no longer qualified to be emperor. Shoo! At that time, Mumu nodded his head at the emperor and pointed to the true king. I get it. The emperor came ahead with a box engraved with a dragon pattern in gold. The expression of the eunuch changed, realizing what this was. Was there anyone who didn't know what it was? The seal. The box here was none other than the box which held the seal. The shocked people rushed for the emperor to try and dissuade him. Why, Your Majesty? Your Majesty! And... thud. Mumu lightly stomped his foot on the floor. Rumble. Hook. To the throne room. As if an earthquake had occurred, the entire hall shook and the floor was split around Mumu, causing everyone to stop. Gulp. The emperor, also scared now, wasn't listening to the officials any longer, as the trembling of the hall made every bit of courage disappear, and any thought of trying to get out of this had completely disappeared. If he didn't do this, then his life wouldn't be saved. He isn't human. He was a walking disaster. The emperor walked to the true king and knelt down. Seeing this, the people around all held despair in their eyes. Click. The emperor was kneeling down with the lid of the box opened, and he raised his voice and said to the true king, Listen. I am not good at managing the state's affairs because I am no good, so I want to give this over to the virtuous true king. At those words the eyes of Hong Neian and the true king were shocked. They didn't know that the emperor would actually bring them the royal seal. Hong Neian looked at Mumu with shocked eyes. What the hell did he do? It made them question what had been done to the emperor for him to kneel and endure this humiliation when he had such a strong desire for power. The emperor was the highest position in the nation. And as a result, the inside of the palace turned upside down right then. Due to the return of the true king to the palace, which was no different from a regular visit, the entire palace was on alert. But this was more shocking than anyone thought possible. The officials who followed the emperor had to stop him, but they were unable to. From now, the Imperial Palace is under the control of the uniformed guards. It was because the true king was given power too quickly. And the uniformed guards were divided into two parts, internal and external. Although there were many skilled warriors which protected the family and its internal affairs, they numbered significantly less than those of the outer palace which protected the imperial castle. Did they hold on to the outer palace? It wasn't a position just to hold power. Before entering the palace, the true king had summoned the officials who still supported him to the hall of the Empress Dowager. However, as the emperor took the throne, the officials had moved in directions to quickly seize the place and calm the palace issues. Spread the news of Emperor Hong's attempt to assassinate his brother outside the palace. Rumors quickly moved from the palace. As a result, the powers of the palace fell into confusion, and the powers of the Imperial faction had no choice but to lie flat on their faces because they couldn't find any words to say. Everything was going the true king's way. "Your Majesty. The princess is here. Come in." Drrr. The door to the emperor's room opened, and Hong Naeon came in. Seeing the piles of papers, appeals, and other documents piled up like a mountain, Hong Naeon just exclaimed, "Ah! You are here?" "Yes. Father." Emperor Hyung Myung-in, who was handling the piled-up work, rose from his seat. Seeing this, the princess was puzzled. Since the previous emperor had been here before, and the transfer of power was too swift, he had a lot of things to do to take control of the palace in order to hold a formal ceremony, so he decided to get the work done by himself. "Sit down." "Yes." As she approached the desk and waited, the emperor also sat across from her. As it was customary for the emperor to sit first, she waited, and the emperor sat down, looking tired from the work. "Phew. Are you okay?" "Of course. It is fine." "No, actually, can I be okay?" "You are tired, right? I saw the affairs of working during the time of my father, but this is too hard." "It will be fine when the palace stabilizes." "It will. Don't push yourself too hard. Now, if father is shaken, the empire will be shaken too." At those words, Emperor Hong Myung-in smiled at his only child. The princess, who had been smiling at him, said, "But father, you must be busy right now, so why?" "I called you because I wanted to ask you for something and hear your thoughts too." "Thoughts?" To her confused face, he said, "It is about the warrior of super strength." When the name of Mumu came up, her eyes shone. If it weren't for Mumu, they could have lost their lives several times over in the past few days. Could it be that she was summoned here to discuss how to repay him? She thought it had to be. "What about Mumu? I want to know what kind of person young Lord Mumu is." What kind of person?" At her confused response, he said like a whisper, "If you know what kind of person he is, then recruit him as an ally." At the words of the emperor, Hong Naeon exhaled. But she never thought that the emperor would be interested in Mumu. He wants Mumu? Actually, this wasn't so odd. Thanks to Mumu, they managed to escape death, and Mumu's power was so strong that even the captains and great warriors were all shocked. If such a person becomes part of their strength, was there anyone who wouldn't be reassured? Want Mumu? Hong Naeon also didn't know much about Mumu. But she knew Mumu was a free-spirited person. Being free-spirited meant that one didn't like being dragged around in the name of an oath or honor. This is why he wasn't afraid of the emperor. Sure, he was like a walking disaster. He was absolutely strong enough to make anyone lose everything. After thinking a moment, she said, "Father, I want you to take Mumu, but..." Before she could continue speaking, the emperor spoke first. "Right. It must not be easy for a person with so much power to be held. However, this incident showed me two things." "Two?" "Yes. May I ask what those two are?" "First of all, I am quite grateful to young Lord Mumu. I even thought that he was someone sent by the heavens." Hong Naeon agreed with it. The power the former emperor had was too much for her and her father to even fight back. However, Mumu changed everything like it was a dream. And thanks to this, she had another thought. Hong Naeon asked, "So this means you are afraid of Mumu?" At that question, Emperor Hong Myung-in nodded with a bitter smile. After noticing the strength of Mumu, the emperor felt both gratitude and fear. Mumu's power wasn't at a level which any human could handle. A walking disaster, just as humans could not defend themselves against a natural disaster. Mumu seemed that scary to the emperor and the enemies. "Speak honestly. I am ashamed to be in a place of still taking help, but I am afraid of him. Is this why you asked for me?" "Yes." At this, Naeon exhaled. "Do not worry. I often did it too. The kid who is a disaster walking around and splitting open a raging river into two. What? The emperor's eyes widened. He couldn't believe what she just said. The days were cloudy now, but there was a time when it was raining. Hong Meian felt a bit sorry but considered that not hiding anything would do more good. Rather, to let him truly know the extent of his power would be right when deciding anything about Mumu. It is as I said. A human made a river flow backwards with one hit? Yes. It was a sight one wouldn't believe unless they saw it for themselves. Huh. At Hong Meian's words, the emperor clenched his hands. Like looking at someone fighting, someone close to a disaster level turned to someone worse than a natural disaster. Gulp. The emperor gulped, not realizing it. What would happen if one was blinded with a false thought against such a being? Then he would be no different from the former emperor who was currently imprisoned. Disaster. No matter how positively he wanted to view it, the anxiety and nervousness weren't going away ever since he took the position of the emperor. If this kind of person wasn't kept close. It was the moment when he thought of something good. He was confused because of the human skin mask being used, but he heard that Mumu was actually only 17 years old. He looked at his beautiful daughter who was just 19. Father? Hong Meian looked puzzled at her father who was staring at her and called for him, making him clear his throat. Princess. Yes, father. What do you think of Mumu as a man? Hong Meian's face turned in an instant, knowing the intention behind this. Seeing this, the emperor smiled. Son-in-law. The solution was surprisingly close.